Hello and welcome to Gardening Australia. This week is the third of our 4 specials for the year, and we're looking at that most precious resource, water, to find out just how important it is to the world of plants. Jane will be on the Victorian coast looking at the impressive landscaping at the controversial desalination plant. Jerry looks into propagation methods for fruiting plants with an expert in Brisbane. And Tina will be reporting on an exciting hydroponics setup on the driest continent on Earth, Antarctica.
It's minus 20 here at KC today. There's a little bit of a breeze, which takes it down to about minus 30 with the wind chill factor.
But first up, you may remember that Sophie and I went out to Alice Springs earlier this year to see what stories were happening in the world of gardening. I had the chance to catch up with some dedicated locals who are helping to restore the flow of water to the Coolabah swamp. These are Coolabahs, beautiful, iconic Australian trees. Early settlers sang about them, jolly swagmen sat beneath them, but their real significance goes way, way back. What's the title of this area? What do you call it?
Ankara, but commonly known as the Coolabah Swamp. The story for this place is the travelling caterpillars that came from the west to meet up here, same species as the local caterpillars, which I am one of them. And big celebrations. They were able to dance, and that's why these trees are in the shape that they are today. And they'll continue, even when the young ones come up, they'll take on the same shape, like they're really moving and dancing.
I'm on the eastern edge of the Todd River near Alice Springs, visiting Ankara, which is 60 hectares of wooded wetland known as the Coolabah Swamp. Doris Stewart is one of the senior custodians.
This area is important because of what it means being an Aboriginal person who belongs to the country, who has responsibility for the country, and it must continue on.
But we can probably put a few more just along the edge of the drain there, so...
Doris wants to make sure that this special place is cared for, so she's getting help from volunteers like Jodie Clarkson. Why is the Coolabah Swamp important?
Well, it's a little remnant landscape, so it's an inland wetland, and this is like the kidneys of Alice Springs. It does that filtering of water that's coming through the landscape.
How's it changed?
It's just been degraded, so lots of reasons, mostly the encroachment of the urbanisation around it, but probably the biggest issue is the drainage. So because houses have been put up, roads have been put in, there's 2 drains that kind of dissect the swamp, and they're just kind of messing with that whole ability for the swamp to do its job as a filter.
The size of this drain must be having an impact on the swamp.
Yeah, massive impact. So when the rains come, instead of them being able to lie in the swamp for a while and the trees take up the water, all of the water just comes straight into this big drain and out into the river.
And you've got your classic invasive species like the cooch here.
Yep.
And buffalo over there.
Yep. Yeah, they're shockers and stop everything else from growing and just crowd them out.
And behind there you've got thick saltbush.
Yeah, so the saltbush belongs here, but not in the amounts that are here. So there's way too much here because it was planted here to try and stop the dust problems in the 60s. So getting some of that out of here so that the salt isn't getting just higher and higher and higher in the swamp here.
For the last 15 years, Jodie and the other volunteers have been working hard to get this place back to its natural state.
We've managed to get our little group together and put ourselves underneath Alice Springs Landcare and work with them, and I've been friends with Doris and her family for many, many years, so that's all sort of come together nicely. There's no recipe book on inland wetland restoration, so it's very much learning together and learning as we're going.
Well, we can go through this one up and give it a bit more of a
This is an area where we've removed the buffle and the cooch, and voila, you can see what happens. It's like magic.
And different flowers popping up. What's coming through?
Just some tiny little daisies over here and these little bluebells. And this one here is a Swainsona. So
I mean, the Swainsona is covering the whole ground.
Yeah.
It's going to keep it moist, reduce the evaporation.
And the erosion.
Yeah.
But one of the most pressing tasks is to get the population of coolabah trees back on its feet.
It's one of the big granddaddies of the swamp, this one, and that's the most important thing about this swamp is that these big trees stay here, can survive here, because they've got those big root systems underneath the ground that are bringing the water up and getting the water out. They're the heart of the swamp.
The coolabah swamp is slowly changing for the better.
It's just great to see these children loving this place and engaging in this place and, you know, call it the beautiful swamp. So that's just a real mind shift from the dirty old dumping ground swamp.
Everybody can pull together and say, OK, we'll help you, you know, just keep this going for us. That's what gives us all hope, I think.
I always wanted a water feature in this garden, but when we first moved in, and with the kids being so young, we decided against it. A year and a half on, and we're ready to put one in. But it's going to be raised for added safety, because we still have lots of very young visitors. The frame's been made from a piece of rolled checker plate steel, which I reckon gives it a great rustic feel. And I filled the bottom with compacted sand, which will be the base for the solid pond liner. But before that goes in, I'm going to line the inside of the frame with a piece of flexible poly liner to create a boggy zone. Once this is fitted, the solid liner will go in and I'll fill the space in between it with soil. In the bog zone, I'm planting Canna Adalis and green taro, which both have edible roots and will provide a bit of height and shade as a backdrop, as well as samphire, which has edible shoots. Around the sides, we'll go several types of mint, including chocolate mint, basil mint and Vietnamese mint. I also need to set up planting pockets in the pond section, and for that I'm using old terracotta pipes, pots and bricks. This broad shallow terracotta pot is perfect for a small crop of water chestnuts. Now the sedge-like foliage likes to grow above the water. It's great habitat for frogs. Now I'll just drop this in here. These will grow beautifully over the summer. In winter, they'll lose their leaves, and that's the sign to harvest the beautiful chestnut corms underneath. And then I've got some beautiful edible plants for these terracotta pipes, starting with one of my favourites, Lebanese cress. Shake some of this soil off. Now this likes to root into some soil, but happily floats or skims across the surface. There we go. Let's pack a little bit of soil around the edge. Then it's water parsley, which is also eaten as a sort of a green, a salad green. Planting these into pots like this will help contain the roots, and that plus picking them regularly to eat the foliage will certainly keep them in check. And this one's English watercress. In a couple of days, when the pond settles and the water clears, I'll add pygmy perch to help with mosquito larvae control. Frogs and aquatic insects will find their own way here, and in a few weeks' time, I'm expecting it to be a thriving, productive, edible aquatic habitat.
The desalination plant at Wonthaggi on the Victorian coast caused a lot of controversy from the time it was first commissioned. What wasn't so controversial was the landscaping that was done there. Jane went to have a look.
There's nothing that I enjoy more than a relaxing ramble through the countryside, strolling through grasslands and nature under a great expanse of open sky. And I feel quite close to that sky right now because I'm 20 metres above ground level and more. I'm on the top of the Victorian desalination plant. and the Bass Coast. That's about 2 hours southeast of Melbourne. At a whopping 2.6 hectares, this rooftop garden is by far the largest in the southern hemisphere. Made up of a mixture of native shrubs, flowering herbs and grasses, this is designed to sit naturally within the landscape.
And you can see how they constructed the dune system that
Yes.
runs all the way around.
Yes,
It continues
like a
around
horseshoe.
and it
Yeah.
links up with the roof garden.
Yep.
And then meanders through and joins up on the other side.
Eric von Seilerkom is a botanist and the man behind the planting design. He is passionate about growing plants in unorthodox places.
There's so much construction taking place and so
Yes.
much habitat loss. And for modern day lives in the cities, we do need to surround ourselves with nature still.
The roof has been planted with an incredible 98,000 plants. Around 26 species that were collected and propagated locally. How much testing of the plants did you do for this site? Because we're right, like we're getting buffeted by the wind on a very calm day, but this is quite windy up here.
That's right. We've firstly selected plants that come from environments with these exposures. We went out into habitat and had a look at key species that grew on the bluffs, on the rocks, and next to the coast where there's a lot of salt spray and wind, and that's where we started selecting species from. We created a testing roof garden site on farmland a little bit further along, and we had quite a few months to sit and watch them to see how they expanded and how they dealt with the different tolerances right there.
And it's basically tufty plants and lots of ground covers, no trees?
Generally not. The size of your plant is dictated by the depth of your soil. In this case, we could get away with quite a few shrub species, but you're looking at maybe 900 mil high. There's a balance between how much root you have and the size of the plant that will be achieved with that root system above ground.
And so how deep is that soil level, or does it change hither and thither?
For the D-cell plant, you're looking at 140 mil deep to around about 160 mil deep.
So tell me about the soil structure.
In order to design a soil that will last for a very long period of time, we reduce the amount of organics we have in it. So we focus highly on inorganics, whether that be scoria or crushed rock. We use different types of ashes to balance the pH, and we use sands to keep good air-filled porosity so that it drains well.
So, Eric, let's talk about some really successful ones. I can see, well, we're standing on some here. That's one of the toughest things, isn't it?
Yes, this one is New Zealand spinach, or tetragonia. It's an edible plant. It's a succulent ground cover, which has proven very successful. But the key point to using this was its ability to grow rapidly and to seed.
And there's some yellow flowering ground cover over there.
Yes, that's a senecio, a local one. That seeds profusely. It isn't really a long-lived one, it's an ephemeral plant, and its key function is to colonize open areas that develop, and that'll be the first plant to emerge, and it protects other slow and growing plants as they take time to emerge and come through as well.
So everything is local, everything is native to this area.
Absolutely, and it was incredibly important for us that should seed or plants move off the roof gardens, that they were safe in the surrounding habitats, no negative impacts.
No weeds spreading anywhere.
Nothing like that at all.
And they obviously depend on natural rainfall from the heavens.
That's correct. We do supplement with irrigation as well during harsh periods, and the entire structure was designed with a water budget in mind. Water is collected, it's filtered through here, it's harvested and retained in dams. We've got various dams around here. They have mechanisms in place which reduce evaporation, and we can recycle all that water through again.
If you need to. It's great to see a project that's looking at the way local species react to these very challenging conditions. Rooftop gardens on a big scale are common in Europe and North America, but we're only just starting to really achieve great green infrastructure here.
The idea is we can inject life, we can inject plants and habitat into the cities and into our homes, and this kind of project shows how it can be done in industry on a very large scale.
Find me a gardener who's not keen to get more yield from their fruit trees. Here's Jerry with an expert on propagation techniques.
I'm on the Sunshine Coast, surrounded by a sea of green. This is the Birdwood Nursery, where they grow a huge range of delicious and unusual fruiting plants.
We grow about 600 different varieties of fruit trees in any one season, and from year to year we can vary that up to 1,200, 1,600.
For 37 years, owner Peter Young has been developing his own propagating techniques, specialising in grafting. So why do you graft?
Well, Jerry, the main reason we graft is to reproduce an identical individual. If we just plant a seed, if that's from sexual reproduction, and the seedlings we grow are all different, just as we are different. So what we do is we plant a seed of the unknown seedling, and then we go to a known mother tree, and we take a cutting off it, and we graft it onto the unknown seedling. And we end up with the variety that we want. Here we have a grafted avocado, and this happens to be the Fuerte variety, or Fuetti variety. It could even be a Hass. But the most important thing is the unknown is changed into something we know.
So this rootstock has special qualities that may be protected against disease, and the top stock provides the fruit that you really want to enjoy.
Correct.
And when it comes down to grafting, you can't just put anything on top of an avocado rootstock. It's got to be something compatible.
That's correct. It's got to be usually within the same genus, certainly within the same family.
The nursery uses a range of different grafting techniques.
First of all, we're going to demonstrate the whip graft. We've got Mike along here, who's one of our most experienced grafters. First, he makes a single cut on the rootstock, and then he'll do exactly the same thing on the piece of grafting material, which we've collected from a Pink's mammoth custapple tree. Puts the two together.
That's a very close match, isn't it? They're almost exactly the same size.
Yep, it's got to be very, very close. Looks really good. And then he'll tie it up with some plastic tape. You must remove this tape afterwards, otherwise it will actually cut the rootstock in half, and that's tied up firmly.
Now that keeps it together while it's healing, but it also keeps moisture in so it doesn't dry out. So what type of graft are we going to see next?
Terminal side graft. We often call it the Asian graft, and it's one that we can use on evergreens like mangoes and avocados. You could use it on hibiscus, roses, you know, pretty well anything that's evergreen. We make a long cut on the grafting piece, turn it over and put a chisel point on the back. Then we just split the rootstock the thickness of the prepared grafting piece. So we're putting it on the side, not down the middle. And this is, hence, it's on the top, which is terminal, and on the side, hence the name terminal side graft. We're keeping some leaves on the rootstock. This is important to have some solar panels on the rootstock to feed the root system during the grafting operation until the graft grows away.
Traditionally, the grafted plants that you'll find in any nursery have only one graft, which is the top stock, the fruiting or flowering part. The bottom part of the plant, the rootstock, is always seed grown, and that makes it variable and a bit unpredictable. Birdwood is pioneering a new grafting technique called clonal rootstock production. They're the only nursery in Australia doing this at the moment. And what that means is that the rootstock is cloned, just like the top stock.
First we start off with a nurse seed, and this is the sexual seed. We plant an avocado seed. This is going to power the whole cloning process. When the shoot gets to around about 150 to 200 millimetres long, we graft it with the clonal rootstock graft. This has been selected for its tolerance against Phytophthora root rot disease and also waterlogging. So what we do is we take a graft off the rootstock tree, we graft it onto the unknown sexual seedling, and here we're going to be producing roots, so this is root cloning.
OK, so now this has been grown in the dark.
It has. Put it into a dark room.
And that helps the roots to be produced along the stem.
Yeah, the chlorophyll inhibits rooting, so we get rid of the chlorophyll, we get roots very easily on the clonal rootstock.
OK, now this little thing here.
And eventually we want the nurse seed at the bottom that's powering the whole process to die. So we put this little ring on to cut it off, and that usually happens between 4 to 8 months.
The cloned rootstock then takes over with its own roots.
So we've had our first graft is for the clone roots, the second graft is for the fruit, and there's the finished product on the end. That one there is around about 9 months.
So the result is a completely reliable cloned double-grafted avocado tree. Grafting is an ancient art, and here at Birdwood, Peter has found new ways that will benefit gardeners wherever they may live. After such a long time in the business, what keeps you happy coming into work on a Monday morning?
I guess it's the plant passion that keeps me going. Once you get chlorophyll into your veins, you just can't get rid of it.
It's hard to believe that Antarctica is the driest continent on Earth, and that Casey Station, one of Australia's bases there, has a thriving veggie patch.
On the driest, windiest and coldest continent in the world, a team of 16 Australians endure the harsh winter season to maintain the Australian Antarctic Division's Casey Station, in preparation for the busy summer period of scientific visits. The conditions are extreme, not for the faint-hearted. But even in this southernmost place, there's a garden bringing sustenance and comfort. I'm here at the Hobart Wharf, and behind us is the icebreaker, the Aurora Australis. Now, Noel's in the process of resupplying the ship for their next trip down to Casey Station, which includes everything that the team needs to resupply their incredible hydroponic system. So, Noel, a lot of gardeners complain about, I suppose, their growing conditions. What's it like growing plants in Antarctica?
Yeah, good question. It's not really to provide a food source, although that seems a little ironic. We've identified it's a great way to maintain morale for people on station, give them somewhere warm and humid, which is a pretty rare commodity in Antarctica, and just to get away from the sterile environment and get into a place that actually contains life and smells like plants.
How often do you get down there to actually resupply your hydro setup?
Each station gets a resupply once a year, which makes hydroponics even all the more important.
What are the difficulties with growing down there?
Power, heat, water. Sure, there's sunlight in the summer, but during the winter there's very little, so we have to provide supplementary lighting as well. We use expanded clay, perlite, but we also use rock wool, particularly for raising seedlings. We have to abide by the Antarctic Treaty, which basically says you will not take any plants, fungi, bacteria, animals into Antarctica unless it's for the purpose of food. So our hydroponics has to abide by all of the guidelines under that treaty.
The garden takes on even greater significance when you take into account the conditions down at Casey Station.
Casey is located on a rocky headland just at the margin of the huge East Antarctic ice sheet. It's -20 here at Casey today. There's a little bit of a breeze which takes it down to about -30 with the wind chill factor. Sometimes we can't go out of the building at all. Sometimes the wind is so strong it can get to over 200 kilometres an hour here. And at that time it's really good to know that everything's secure and that everyone is safe and warm inside.
In those extraordinary circumstances, self-sufficiency in growing food is not just important for nutrition, but for the spirit as well.
Antarctica is an amazing place to spend time, and there's not a lot I miss here apart from my family. One thing I do miss is green and growing things. Antarctica is beautiful and it's a lot of colours, not just white. It's never usually green. Growing anything in the harshest environment on the planet is a challenge.
We have two 20-foot refrigerated containers which have been joined together for our grow rooms, and in those grow rooms between the two we have 17 grow beds and 4 dedicated lettuce beds. Our main concern is to manage the water, so we want to maintain 1 litre of water a minute to the plants, and that's to guarantee that the plants have a healthy source of oxygen. So there's been a lot of trial and error, a lot of wins, a lot of failings, but it's been good fun and we get good produce, and it's all working quite well now. Everyone enjoys fresh fruit and vegetables, and I really think that this space is kind of lovely to come to with how cold and bleak and white it is outside. Even though it's very beautiful, it's really nice to get into the green and be able to sit under these nice warm lights and and remember what the garden looks like at home.
Much more let's eat. This is awesome, guys. Like, this is what it's all about. It makes my life very happy down here when you guys give me this stuff. Obviously everything's dried or it's frozen, so any kind of leafy green vegetable or bright fresh tomato, it saves my life. It really is very important, I think, down here. I think everyone appreciates it, puts a beautiful finishing touches on the food, and thank God for the hydroponics.
So the next time you think it's too hard or too cold to get out into your own patch, spare a thought for the expeditioners down at Casey and the challenges that they've had to overcome to produce fresh produce in Antarctica. Well, bon voyage, Aurora Australis. Safe journey south.
What an amazing gardening story in a spectacular landscape, and the perfect way to end our special on water. Next week is the last of our specials, and it's the final episode for this year. Here's what's coming up.
Our final special is all about climate, and I'll be surprising Gardening Australia's 2014 Gardener of the Year with the news that they've won, and we'll have a look around the garden. Angus visits the Australian Plant Bank to see the important work being done there and its role in plant preservation and conservation. And Jane will be chatting with the director of Melbourne's Royal Botanic Gardens to try and make sense of our seasons.
Well, what a great year it's been. It's absolutely rocketed by, and I've loved it. I hope you can join us next week for our final episode of 2014. I'll see you then.
Wednesday, jump on board for a massive lineup of laughs.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Goodbye.
At 8, Sean McAuliffe's Mad as Hell. 8:30, it's the Chasers Media Circus.
No one can shirt front anyone.
Well, this is nice. Julia Zamiro chats to Ruth Jones at 9:05.
All the time I'm just like...
Then the outrageous black comedy at 9:35.
Taking a photo.
Selfie.
Selfie.
Wednesday from 8, ABC is the place to be.
The ABC is proud to be the official free-to-air broadcaster of the AFC Asian Cup. To celebrate, we bring you Japan and our Socceroos. International Football Live, Tuesday at 9 on ABC. She's a girl born in a boy's body.
I just said that I didn't want to be a boy, I felt like a girl.
With the courage to change.
I just think that's something to be admired.
And a family that loves her.
We've only got one job here, and that is to help her create a future that she can live with.
If you don't be yourself, you're going to be miserable for your whole life.
Being Me, Four Corners, Monday on ABC.
Relive the magic of Countdown and hear classic stories from those who were there.
Nobody prepared me for Molly Meldrum. Your Royal Highness. Oh, sorry, mate.
Do yourself a favour. Tomorrow, 7:40, ABC.
Tonight on ABC, the gang investigate a corrupt police officer on new tricks. Then Scott and Bailey, and later the Dr. Blake mysteries.
And tonight on ABC2, it's the season finale of Doctor Who. Then the world's most angst-ridden love story continues.